Hello everyone, I'm Michael Buckman, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about GitHub and Power Platform today. We're going to see how they work together, we're going to see how we can use ALM, and we're going to look at version control with Power Platform solutions. So let's get started. The first thing I want to look at today is the Microsoft documentation on how to set up a Power Platform solution with GitHub and GitHub Actions. I think this is a super detailed walkthrough, and if you ever get stuck or need help, this is a great reference. We'll throw the link in the description so you can access this easily. So there's a few things that we need to configure first before we jump into GitHub. I'm going to jump into the Azure portal. Inside here, we'll go to Azure Active Directory, and then we're going to go to App Registrations. I've already configured my app registration, but I'm going to show you how to do this. So you're going to click on New Registration, and you're going to give this some kind of meaningful name like Azure DevOps, name of your solution, something like that. And then you can also create one for your dev environment and one for production. That's how I've chosen to set this up. So once you've created your app registration, you'll see something like this. Now, we need to go to API permissions and make sure that the Dynamics CRM permission is added. To do that, you just click on Add Permission, add Dynamics CRM, and then make sure that the user impersonation permission is checked. Once that's selected, you'll click Add Permission. That will show up here, and you'll want to make sure that you grant admin consent to this permission. Once that's done, you'll see this nice green checkbox. Okay, the other area that we want to go to is the certificates and secrets. We need to create a client secret for this app registration. To do that, you just click on New Client Secret, give it a meaningful name, pick the expiration date on it, and click Add. Once you click Add, you want to make sure that you copy the value of that secret and store that in Notepad, somewhere accessible, because we'll use that soon in the configuration in GitHub. So once you copied that, you can navigate away, and we can go over and make sure that we copy the application ID and the directory ID or the tenant ID, because we'll use those in the configuration in GitHub as well. So copy those over where your client secret is in Notepad or wherever you're storing that. And there's one other place that we need to configure after we've created this app registration. So we'll need to navigate over to the Power Platform Admin Center, and we're going to need to add that app registration that we just created into our environments, because that's going to give access to GitHub to access our Power Platform environments. So let's get started with that. So the next thing that we need to do is navigate over to the Power Platform Admin Center, and we need to add our app to our environments. Whether you have just one app or two, one for dev and one for prod, we need to make sure those are added to both dev and to production environments so that GitHub can access those environments and export our solutions and import our solutions. So let's head over there. Okay. Now, I'm in the Power Platform Admin Center, and I'm going to click on my dev environment. Once I'm in my dev environment, I can click on Settings, and I can click on User and Permissions. And then we're going to click on Application Users. Now, I've already got my app registration added here, but to do this, you just click on New App User, add an app, and then search for your app registration. I believe you can use either client ID or the name of the app registration. Once you've done that, you'll select that. You'll select your business unit, and then you'll select security roles. Now here you're going to want to select either System Administrator or System Customizer. I have chosen to use System Administrator for my app registrations. All right, so let's jump over to GitHub and see what we need to configure. Okay, So I've configured a GitHub repository, which is the first thing you need to do. So first, create a GitHub repository, and really all you need is a README file inside that repository. Okay, once your repository is created, we'll want to look at the first action that we need to create. So head over to Actions, and then we're going to look at the Export and Branch solution. This is the first action that we're going to create. Now, if you remember the documentation that I showed at the beginning of the video, that's linked in the description, there are a few links in there that are helpful. One is for the Power Platform Actions Lab repository that Microsoft has created. Inside of this repository are a bunch of templates for GitHub Actions that we can use and really get us pretty far. There's only a few things that we need to change in these template files, which are just configuration values for our environment. So if we look over at the first action that we're going to create, I'm in the Power Platform Actions Lab repository, and under Actions, I'm under the Export and Branch solution with SPN auth YAML file. So this is the template that we're going to want to copy. So first, you can copy the raw output of this, copy, and we can go back and we can click New Workflow. So inside of here, you're going to go ahead and you're going to click on Set Up a Workflow Yourself, or you can do Configure a Simple Workflow. First thing I want to do before I do that is I'm going to go into Settings. I'm going to go over to Secrets and Variables and click on Actions. We need to create or store we're going to create a new repository secret and store our client secret that we created for our app registration. So you can see that I've created one for dev and one for production. I have 2 app registrations, one for each environment. Now, you might just have one app registration and you can just create one that's called Power Platform SPN. That is the naming schema that is inside of the templates that Microsoft created. So to do that, you just click on New Repository Secret, give it that name, and then add your secret and click Add Secret. Okay, once that's done, we can go back to Actions. Again, we can click New Workflow, and you can either click Set Up a Workflow Yourself or Configure a Simple Workflow. I'm going to just click on Set Up a Workflow Yourself. Here, we'll paste all of the template code into this new workflow that we have started. And then you're going to want to change the name of the YAML file. So this is what gets stored in your repository. You'll want to change it to the name of the action. So we can change this name to Export and Branch Solution. Once you've done that, you'll also want to make sure that you update your configuration items here. So environment URL, client ID, and tenant ID. Again, client ID and tenant ID we stored in Notepad along with our client secret. So we can just grab those and paste them into this file. And then we want to paste the dev URL from Power Platform into this configuration value. Once that's done, you can commit changes, and then we can kick this off. So I'm going to go back to my actions. I've already created this and configured it for my environment. I've called it Export and Branch Solution. If we look at the YAML file, we're going to see a client ID and a tenant ID, as well as my environment variable. And that's really the only things that we need to change. So once that's done, we can go ahead and run this workflow. Once you run the workflow and it completes successfully, it will create a solutions folder in your repository. And it's going to create a folder within that. That's the name of your solution. So this will be the name of your solution, and inside of that will be the unpacked solution that's stored in your repository. Once you've done that and you see that there, you know that first action's been successful. There's one other item that you're going to see in that solutions folder that I've added after that action created the solutions folder, and that's the settings folder. I manually created a settings folder within the solutions folder, and I've stored a rockhop out of office.json file. So the name of my solution.json file that stores all of my environment variables. Now, you can generate this file from the Power Platform CLI. There's a command for this that I'll paste in the description below this on this video. So this is, once we run that command, it outputs this JSON file, which I've then stored inside of this settings folder, and I've made sure that it has the production environment variables, as this will be used when we're importing the solution. We can specify a settings file when we're importing the solution, and this is what this will be used for. Okay, so that's the first action. We have two more actions that we need to configure that I'll get to next. Okay, now that we've configured the first action, we have another action that we need to create that will be responsible for importing the solution into the production environment. Okay, so we're back in our GitHub repository, and I'm going to go ahead and click on actions again. So we have two more actions that we need to create. One's going to be the template that's going to be fed inputs from another GitHub action, which is going to be called the release action, which will be the trigger for when we create a release within GitHub. So that might sound a little confusing right now, but I'll show you how what this is all about and what we need to do. All right, so we have our release solution to prod, and I've called this the reusable YAML file. So this is with inputs. It's going to be fed inputs by another action. What does this look like? Now, again, I'm going to use the Microsoft repository templates, and I'm going to go ahead and show you where that's at and what I used here. So we're going to use the release solution to prod with inputs YAML file inside of this Power Platform Actions Lab repository. And again, this link is in the Microsoft documentation, and I'll paste this link as well in the description of this video. So we are going to copy this YAML code again, and we're going to create a new workflow. Again, it can just be a set up your workflow yourself option here, and just be a blank workflow. And we're going to paste that YAML code in here. Once you do that and you update the values in there, you'll commit changes. Now, let's go over to my already pre-configured YAML file that I have for this action. So let's go over actions, release solution to prod reusable. And let's click on that YAML file and check this out. Now, there's nothing really that you need to update in this file because it's fed from the inputs on the top here. So everything's going to be fed into this action. So not much we need to change. I did change the default solution name to the name of my solution, so I don't have to fill that out each time I run a release. It will automatically just pick that up. So that's something that you might want to update for yours as well. But that's the only thing that we really need to change in this file. So once you paste your template code into your new workflow and change that value, you can commit changes. Once that's done, we then have one other action that we need to create for this, and that's the release action call. So this basically gets called every time that you create a release within your GitHub repository. It triggers everything. So what does that look like? Again, we grabbed this from the Microsoft repository that has all of the templates for the GitHub actions already pre-built for you. And this is a very, very simple one. It really just takes inputs. So you'll copy this code, and this again is the release action call.yaml file. We'll copy this. We're going to paste it into a new workflow. So you'll open up a new workflow, paste this in. Again, it can just be a simple start from scratch workflow, paste this in, and then you're going to update all the values. And again, you can kind of see that I have updated all the values to my environment values. You're going to want your build environment, your dev environment for this configuration value, the production environment URL, client ID, and again, I have a client ID for production, two separate ones, my tenant ID, and then my environment secrets. And I've got one for dev and one for production. So once your configuration values are all set up, you can then commit your changes and your actions are all ready to go. So to recap, we've now created 3 actions within GitHub. One is going to export our solution and is going to create a branch within a repository, which then we can create a pull request for and merge it into our main repository as we see fit. Once it's in our main repository, we then can create a release within our GitHub repository, which will then trigger our release action call, which, if you remember, is just the inputs for our environment, which will then call our main template that has all of the actions inside of it. The main template is going to actually import that solution into our production environment with that settings file that we created. So it will use all of the production environment values for our environment variables, and it'll be ready to go. So let's actually see this in action. Okay, so now that I'm in my export and branch solution action, the first action that we created, let's go ahead and kick this off. I've made a slight change to my solution. So we should be able to see that in our version control and see that in production. So let's go ahead and just walk through this full life cycle here. So I'm going to go ahead and run the workflow. This will kick it off. And this will take a second for it to run. So I'm going to pause the video here. So this workflow is running. We are now exporting the solution. Solution export succeeded. Now we're unpacking the solution, so we're unzipping it. And we're going to branch the solution and prepare it for a pull request. So now we're checking in this solution and we're branching it. Okay, the job is complete and it was successful. So if we go back here, we should be able to see a new branch that was created. So let's look at this. Yes, we have one other branch in here and we can see it was created just now. If we go to it, we can see that we have our solutions folder and it's created all of our folders underneath this from our exported solution. Now let's create a pull request. We'll say new pull request. And let's go back. We're in main. And let's go ahead and create a pull request. And we want to take our RockCop out of office with the time stamp on it, which is what the action created. We want to take this branch and we want to merge it into the base, into main. So we can see that there are a few little changes in here that it's detected from our original file. Again, I just made a small change to our Canvas app that it has picked up. And we can now create a pull request from this. Go ahead and create. This is going to say, okay, we're ready to merge this pull request. There are no conflicts. So let's go ahead and merge and confirm. Now I'm going to go ahead and keep this clean and delete this branch. So now we have no other branches except for main, but we have merged that new exported solution into main. Okay, so now what? Now that we have created that pull request, and that pull request has gone through and has updated the main branch, we can now create a release to trigger that second action, the second and third action that we created, so that the solution gets imported into production. So let's head over there. Okay, so now I'm back in my repository here. And I'm going to go over to releases here. So I'm going to click on releases. I'm going to draft a new release. I'm going to give it a tag. I'm going to call this version 9. And then I'm going to say we are, let's name this releasing to production for demo. Okay. And I'm not going to add any descriptions for this release. We're just going to go ahead and publish this. Okay, so what's this doing now? This just kicked off our release action. And we have all of those inputs that we added to that release action. So it's using those and kicking off that second action that we created. So let's go over there. We can see that we called our release action. And now we're going through that templated, the second action that we created that has all of the different actions. All of our inputs have been fed into this. And let's kind of go through this. So first, we're packing the solution up. So we're packing it from the repository, zipping it up so that we can import it. What this is actually doing is importing it into our dev environment, our build environment. So that we can then export that as a managed solution. So we first imported it in the first action, or we first exported it in the first action as an unmanaged solution and stored that as such, so that we can see, so get some nice version control from that. And then next, our next action is now packing that solution up, importing it into our build environment, our dev environment, exporting that as a managed solution so that we can then get ready to import that into our prod environment as a managed solution. So this will take a second here. All right, so our solution's been imported successfully into dev. It's been published. Now we're exporting it as a managed solution. And now we wait. So now our first stage in our release action has been successful. So what's happened during that is we packed our solution up, imported it into our dev environment, exported it as a managed solution, and we inserted that into the GitHub artifact store so that our next phase in the release can now pick that up from the artifact store and release it into production. And now we wait again. Okay, now our solution is being imported into production. Once this is done, we can go check this out and see if our solution actually was successfully imported and see our change. Okay, so now the solution's been imported and it's publishing all the customizations. Okay, it's all done and it was successful. So let's check this out. Now, I made this change in my dev environment before releasing this to production. I said, we are in production, thanks for watching. And this is in my dev environment. Let's go over to production. Let's go to our solutions, Back up out of Office. Let's go to our app. And let's play this. All right, there we are. We are in production. Thanks for watching. All right, so let's just recap here. We were able to use GitHub with Power Platform to get version control and to set up ALM with GitHub Actions to export solutions from our dev environment and import them into production. And we can use branching, pull requests, all of that good stuff, all the good things that GitHub provides, we were able to use pretty seamlessly with our Power Platform solution. That's pretty awesome. So I think Microsoft has done a great job of integrating all of this, not with just with GitHub, but also with Azure DevOps, which I'll show in another video, and also the built-in pipelines that Power Platform has. So lots of different ways that we can set up ALM and version control for Power Platform solutions, just like we would with custom solutions. So really cool stuff. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.